hopefully this is all going to work. Brilliant. All right, good. Now then, let me just get into view. For those of you that know me, I'm not really good with technology, so this could all go horribly, horribly wrong, but hopefully it won't. Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Nigel Wilkinson. I work in the fine dining team along with Bea, Pascal, Sophie Russell and Scott White. Between the four of us, we sort of look after fine dining restaurants throughout the UK. So on behalf of Bea, Sophie and Scott, good morning. Big thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. Also, a massive thank you to the producers. So we'll go through the producers, but in essence, we've got Louis Boutineau joining us from Waterkloof. We have Danielle and Emmanuel joining us from Carve de Turkheim. We also have Nikki Moser joining us from Austria. We have from Piemonte, we have Alberto De Grezi and also Jeff Chilcott joining us. We also have joining us Diego. Diego is joining us from Rioja to show the fantastic wines of Bodegas Valanciso. And then we also have joining us today Jan Pettersson from Jerez to talk to us about Fernando de Castilla. And I can just see that Ronan Sabin has just joined the Zoom as well. For some reason, I've got Ronan on my screen. I don't know why, but there we go. Yes, I can see you. Okay, fantastic. Other thank yous. I just want to say a big thank you to Steve, who is our IT genius, who has helped me put together this presentation today. As I said before, I'm absolutely useless with technology. I wouldn't know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. So, so Steve is here to help me. If at any point this turns into an Alan Partridge episode, then just please excuse us. We will try and get it all right, and we will try and fix it. Also, a big thank you to Yvonne down in customer services. So Yvonne helped put together all the wines to make sure that each of you received your wine packs. Hopefully you all received your wine packs in good condition. So a big thank you to Yvonne, the customer service manager, for sorting all that out for us. In terms of today's format, if you do have any questions, please post it on the chat box. I'll try and go through each question for the producers through the chat box if I'm technically able to. So without further ado, I think we're going to launch with Louis Boutineau, and we are going to have a discussion, 10-minute discussion with regards to Waterkloof. So Louis, are you there? Can you unmute yourself and can you turn your video on, please? Is that working?
Hi, Nigel. The video should be on now, yeah. Brilliant. Hi, everyone. Morning.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Louis. Thank you for joining us. How are you? Yeah,
very well. Thank you, Nigel. In the UK with most of your watchers today. Not back in Cape Town where it's a balmy 28 degrees centigrade, but we're all surviving. We're all surviving, aren't we, together?
Fantastic. Excellent. So Waterkloof, it's a unique property. Can you just give us a little bit of an insight with regards to Waterkloof?
Yeah, many of you will be familiar with Waterkloof. I'll give you a little bit of background, but please don't hesitate to get stuck into the wine we're going to show today, the Circumstance Sauvignon Blanc. But before I go into the wine, I will give you a bit of background. So Waterkloof, or Waterkloof, was founded in 2004 by a former sommelier, a wine importer, wine producer in France, my father, Paul Boutineau. It's an independent family-owned estate, an organic farm. We're situated about 35 kilometers southeast of Cape Town, perched on a hillside called the Scarpenberg, 5 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean, the very chilly, bracing Atlantic Ocean, completely exposed to the elements. Yeah, and we've been farming there since we bought the property in 2004, but we only actually built a cellar and started producing wine in 2009. So I'm gonna, I'll take you from that point up to where we are now with this Sauvignon Blanc. So when we bought the property in 2004, it was a vineyard. Where we are, it's in Stellenbosch, but it's right on the coastal outskirts of Stellenbosch. It is an area that is significantly cooler than the majority of the vineyards in Stellenbosch, and very, very low yielding area because of this exposure that we have to the ocean. So it's an area, the Scarpenberg, the hill we're on, that wasn't really planted until the mid-1990s, when South Africa went from being a producer known for producing quantity and really a cooperative-led wine producing country. And really after apartheid ended, it started to become more quality driven, and people started to look for areas where the natural production levels of the vineyards were lower. And so the Scarpenberg was only planted really, yeah, like I said, in the mid-1990s. And my dad, who'd spent 25 years plus making wine with other people's grapes, he'd been looking for a vineyard, and the kind of area he was looking for is a place where you can grow grapes that are naturally in balance, where little to no modification is required in the cellar. For that, you need low yields, natural acids, good tannins. You need grapes that are, yeah, like I said, naturally in balance, and also somewhere where you could farm without the use of pesticides, herbicides. So somewhere you could farm organically. And there's not so many areas around the world where you can get both of those things: naturally balanced grapes and the ability to farm organically relatively easy. It's never easy farming organic, but there are places where it's harder than others. So yeah, we bought a farm in 2004 that was conventional. It was planted to vine. There were already vineyards planted there, mainly Sauvignon Blanc. So when we bought the property, my dad, remembering all the wines that he'd made in the Rhone Valley and in the Loire previously, I knew that he wasn't a huge fan of Sauvignon Blanc. There would be more Chenin Blanc. If we're talking about the Loire, there'd be more Chenin Blanc on our dinner table when I was younger. But there was Sauvignon Blanc on Waterkloof when we bought it, and he tried the wines that were being produced from this vineyard, because these vines had been planted for 15 years already, and they were fantastic. And every vintage that was produced by our neighbor who was purchasing the grapes was still alive or getting better in the bottle. So we kept the Sauvignon in the ground. And so the circumstance that you're going to taste today is from these original vines that were planted. So there's some of our older vines on the property, and all our Sauvignon Blanc is right at the very top of the farm. So it's in the most exposed area. At the front of Waterkloof, you have a kloof, which is a ravine, and then you have the ocean. And so the wind comes from the ocean, very cold ocean influenced by the Antarctic, and it rips through the vineyards. And so the top blocks at about 300 meters above sea level and 5 kilometers from the ocean get hit the hardest. So we have a grape like Sauvignon Blanc, which is, for most wine producers, quite a high yielding grape, especially if you use synthetic fertilizers and if you irrigate, which we don't. We've got it planted really in the area where we get the lowest production level. So to give you an idea, the production is, we get about 3 tons per hectare, or about 20 hectoliters per hectare. So commercial Sauvignon Blanc vineyards, you'd expect to get up to 18, 20 tons per hectare, or 200 hectoliters per hectare. So we get very, very low production.
How old are these vines, Louis?
The average age is 21-year-old vines, so not super old, but actually for Sauvignon Blanc, I would say they're pretty mature vines. And the production level is not just about the elements and the circumstances in which the grapes are grown. It's also about the way we farm the vineyards. So Vartacliffe is, since we took over the property, is an organic and biodynamic farm, but converting it from being a conventional property, which we took over, to biodynamic took a while. We work in a self-sufficient way, so which is key in biodynamics. So we have about 170 animals, cows, sheep, chickens, goats, which are really primarily for producing fertilizer, but also for weed control. We produce about 300 tons of fertilizer on the property every year. Half of Vartacliffe is vineyard, but half of it is wilderness. We're in the world's richest plant kingdom, the Cape Floral Kingdom. So half of the farm is wild flowers, which again, for us, we think should be a key element of biodynamics to promote biodiversity, because that really gives you a good foundation for being able to farm in an organic way.
Louis, I understand that. I remember you telling me, and also your father telling me that sort of when you converted the vineyards from commercial farming into biodynamics, within a few years you started to see species and animals coming back into the vineyard that hadn't been there for many years.
Yeah, I mean, we're only 45 minutes from Cape Town city centre, but it's amazing. I think over the last 5 or 6 years, we've had 7 or 8 photographs of leopards, Cape leopards in the vineyards. And it really started off with this native flower species that came back to the property, because that really started to bring back all of the animals that these apex predators would predate on. So it's an amazing story, and kind of it's an amazing journey to see this change. But really what we've been after from day one is what's happening under the soil, and that's really why the primary reason why we're farming the way we farm. Because for my dad, it's about what he puts in his gob at the end of the day. It's the end result. It's the wine. So just to tell you in a bit more detail about Circumstance Sauvignon and about how we produce it. So obviously, like I said, very low yields. The grapes are hand picked. We press the grapes in a champagne press on a champagne cycle. So it's a cockard press. So the kind of press that a lot of the champenois will use. Very delicate. We're not looking for any, we don't do any skin contact at all. So very delicate, pure juice. And then it settles. We don't use any enzymes to settle the juice. It ferments spontaneously with the yeast that are present on the grapes. The fermentation took about 6 months to complete, and they're fermented in big old 600-litre barrels, the same kind of barrels that they use in the Loire and the Rhone.
Natural yeast, maybe, sorry?
Yeah, it's all our wines are natural yeast, so that's why the fermentation is much slower than a typical white wine fermentation, which would maybe take about a week or week to 2 weeks. This was the 6 months, and then about another 4 months, I think, they spent on the lees. So for Sauvignon Blanc, it's quite a slow process. Obviously, with my dad's background, his family are from the Loire Valley. If you look at those kind of classical Loire producers, Dagenot, Cotard, similar kind of winemaking process, very delicate juice, and then very, very slow, gentle winemaking. So we want Sauvignon Blanc that's not all about the instant aromatic punch. We want Sauvignon that develops in the glass, that is aromatic, but the aromas are quite gentle, where you don't get that kind of slap in the face of aroma. What you still do get is you get a very intense palate, because of that very low yield and that long time on the lees. So
we hopefully all should have in front of us the Circumstance Sauvignon Blanc 2019. Now, with regards to this one, we'll talk about the 2019. But you actually wanted to show 2020, didn't you, at this tasting? But it only actually arrived on Friday, so hence the reason why we couldn't send it out to you. But I do understand that you've very generously agreed to send out to everybody a bottle of the 2020 as well. So thank you, Louis. But going back to the 2019, what I really like about this is this lovely minerality. I think sort of, for me, South African Sauvignon Blanc sort of sits somewhere in between sort of France and New Zealand in terms of the geography, but also stylistically. And what this has is this freshness, this crispness. You get the sort of the fruit character that you would associate with Sauvignon Blanc. Plus also it has this lovely minerality. Would you agree, Louis?
Yeah, and I think that sort of, I mean, minerality is a very broad word, but I think that mineral kind of nuanced quality, I think it seems to be something that we really get because of this proximity to the ocean. And Jan's going to be showing some wines from Jerez later. I think it's going to be the last wine, but you get that salinity in Amanthania, you get salinity in a lot of wines that are grown near the ocean, and our Sauvignons really tend to transmit that. So of course, in terms of food pairing, our Sauvignons work amazingly with seafood. And the other thing that for me that makes them stand out are the kind of the length of flavor and the ability to age. So every vintage we've made since 2009, aside from one of the vintages, is still living. Most of them are still getting better in the bottle. Obviously, we're conscious that people don't keep Sauvignon Blanc for very long, but it is really exciting for us that, because there's not many vineyards around the world that produce Sauvignons that actually really improve with time. So once opened, recommend decanting this wine. It really loves oxygen. And you can easily keep it in a fridge for a week. So obviously I think you've got 5-6 bottles of wine open today. You can give it a try, keep the Sauvignon Blanc in the fridge and see how it develops, because it's had that oxidative winemaking process, and because the grapes are really fantastic that we use, it really does benefit from seeing a bit of air.
Fantastic. If you do have any questions for Louis, please post them in the chat box. In terms of the vintage, you're about to start the vintage from 2021, is that correct?
Yeah, it's going to be a bit later this year. We'll probably start sort of last week of February, and it's looking good. We've had rain for the first time really for about 5 years in the Cape. So we're going to get, maybe we'll get 3.5 tons per hectare instead of 3 tons. So that'll put us on a par with sort of Didier Dagenau, which would be nice. So yeah, it's looking really good. It's not been too hot either in the summer, so fingers crossed for a good vintage. And I just want to finish up by thanking everyone again for taking the time to come and attend and taste these wines. There's some fantastic wines coming up, presented by some amazing people. So I really hope you enjoy them. It beats watching the news, and I hope these wines sustain you through the next week in lockdown.
There's a question just come in. It's actually coming from of all people, Ronan Sayburn. Hi, Louis. South African Sauvignon Blanc used to be very tropical, and there he says almost sweaty. Yours is tropical. Is this due to picking?
It really varies vintage to vintage. When we pick a bit later, it tends to get more of that tropical character. The earlier you pick, that's when you tend to get more of the pyrazine green characters. But really, it's just the idea with circumstances. It's a product of vintage, of place, hence the name of the wine. So it really depends. It depends partly on the picking date, but also just the length of the vintage, the flowering to picking date. It's a wide range of things, and the way the wine is made to an extent as well. If you use natural yeast, you're going to get less kind of aromatic characters. You're going to get more subtlety, more minerality. So yeah, there's never an easy answer to wine questions, is there?
So David from Panoramic 34, basically saying how lovely the wine is, and it's their house wine by the glass. Giuseppe So Giuseppe is asking, what type of soil are you working on?
Yeah, so this is two blocks that adjoin each other, and it's compact sandstone. So it's not what I'd say sandy soils. It's kind of very, very old. We've got some of the oldest viticultural soils in the world down in South Africa, and it's this very, very compacted sandstone. So it drains pretty well, and then underneath there's clay. So that also is good for water retention, because we don't get very much water. We're in the driest area in the whole of Stellenbosch on our hillside, and like I said, we've had some dry vintages. So yeah, it's tough. We'd love to have some silex up there, but alas, we don't. So we've got these sandstone soils.
Fantastic. So that was a question from Giuseppe from Coq d'Argent. Brilliant.
Thanks,
Louis,
Giuseppe.
thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you very much for taking the time to taste with us. And also, thank you very much for your generosity. So just to recap, everybody next week will also be sent a bottle of the 2020 Circumstance Sauvignon Blanc to taste at your own leisure. The 19 is lovely. How will the 19 differ from the 20?
The 20, it's really primarily about the palate. The 20 for me has more purity, and has more length and depth. It's obviously younger in its evolution, so it will benefit from a few more months in bottle, but it's really the key difference is the palate, the length and depth of the wine. So I think every winemaker says their latest vintage is better than the last one, but personally, I really do think the 2020 is superior.
Okay, and just one final question from Donald at La Trompette. Whereabouts specifically are you within Stellenbosch?
So we're about 35 kilometers south of Stellenbosch. So we don't actually have a ward. So you'll see on the bottle it says Stellenbosch because we're in Wine of Origin Stellenbosch, but we're actually nearer to a town called Somerset West. So the difference in temperature, say between where we are and actually the bulk of the vineyards further inland over the hills, it's about 5 degrees centigrade. And that's one of the amazing things about the Cape. You don't have to travel very far to have huge differences in climate, from rainfall to temperature to soils as well. So very different, and that really reflects in the wines hugely.
Fantastic, excellent. So once again, Louis, thank you very much indeed. If you can now kindly mute yourself and turn your video off, and the next producer that we're going to look at will be Cave de Turckheim. So we are now going to be joined by Danielle, who is the winemaker at Cave de Turckheim, and also Emmanuel. So if you can both kindly sort of switch on your videos, that would be great. Fantastic.
Hello, nice to meet you all.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to discuss with you today.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us both. So we were talking earlier on, before everybody joined us, about the weather. And what is the weather like in Alsace today?
Fresh, very fresh. We had a cold night, -7 degrees, and a sunny day with 1 degree expected.
Wow. Okay. I think it's warmer here in the UK than it is in Alsace today.
No, maybe.
So, Emmanuel, can you just tell us a little bit, please, about the fantastic estate of Cave de Turckheim?
Yes. So Cave de Turckheim is a cooperative. We were founded in 1955. So we celebrated last year our 65th anniversary. From the beginning, we had the particularity to select different soils instead of having just one Riesling in our offer. People knew that in a particular area, the wine had a particular character. And we are situated on 2 fault lines and have a lot like a puzzle or mosaic of different soils around the winery. So Turkheim is nearby Colmar. For if you don't know a little bit about Alsace, we are situated nearby Colmar. So all this soil selection, we have more than 50 different wines in our portfolio. Buccino is having a lot of them in their list, on their list. We are known for our selection of soils, and it's make a good transition for Daniel. The Grand Cru brand that we will taste today. I think you have the bottle in front of you. We will show you, for those of them, this is a bottle of Riesling Grand Cru brand. Daniel, I will introduce Daniel. Daniel, some of you maybe met Michel. Michel is retiring this year, and Daniel is taking over the responsibility of the vinification and all the wines from Turkheim. So you will probably meet Daniel in the future. So I will let Daniel speak about the Grand Cru brand.
Okay, before we talk about the Grand Cru brand, Danielle, could you just tell us how many growers are you working with in total?
We have 150 growers for 400 hectares.
Okay, and as I understand, the more and more of those growers are now going organic.
Yes, that's true. We have more than 50, let's say 15% of our growers are now organic wine growers. We are in a sustainable viticulture since more than 35 years. And naturally, the new generation, when they take over the vineyards of their parents, they want to go a step further. And this is for us, the organic viticulture.
Okay. Now, for many people, you know, for many journalists in particular, and also sommeliers, Turkheim is also, you know, is often regarded, should I say, as arguably the best cooperative. And, you know, sort of many people have this idea that sort of sometimes cooperatives can make inferior wines. But I've always felt with regards to Turkheim that, the wines that you make are always pure, very expressive, very indicative of the region. So in terms of sort of, you mentioned before, how many hectares are you working with?
400.
400, okay. And does that go all the way from which villages will you cover?
So it's, let's say 15 kilometers around Turkheim.
Okay, all with around.
Most of the grape coming from Turkheim, from the Münster Valley, and yeah, 15 kilometers around.
Fantastic. And would you actually dictate to your growers what you can and can't, what they can and can't do?
Our growers have to bring 100% of their production to the co-op and respect also the different rules that we have, particularly on Grand Cru or terroir soils or Pinot Noir. We have our own rules, and they have to respect that, of course, if they want to come to the co-op.
Exactly. So we don't usually in cooperative we pay the grape with weight, but for Grand Cru and block selection we pay the viticulturist per hectares. So if we want we want that the viticulture make good work and not just money. So we follow each selection and Grand Cru all the years, and so we pay the viticulture for the grape and not just the weight of the grape.
So it's all about quality.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So in terms of Grand Crus then, Danielle, how many Grand Crus are you working with?
So actually we work with between 5 and 7 Grand Cru all around Turkheim. So today we're going to talk about Grand Cru brand, but we also have Grand Cru Sommerberg just next to Turkheim in Niedermorschwihr. Also a famous Grand Cru for Riesling. We work with Grand Cru Ems also, with Pinot Gris, and we make also very good Gewürztraminer on this Grand Cru. And the three main Grand Cru, and we also have in Egisheim and in Katzenthal another Grand Cru. Yeah.
Okay, so what is so special about the Grand Cru of Brand?
So here in Grand Cru Brand, so we are on the mountain of Turkheim, just next to Colmar. We are at the middle of Alsace. The Grand Cru Brand is located at the end of the Münster Valley. So this Grand Cru takes all the benefits of the wind of the valley. So it's very dry. It's a warm and early terroir, maybe one of the most early terroir in Alsace. And the vineyard is between 250 and 380 meters, altitude meters, sorry. So the exposition is south and southeast. So it's definitely a solar terroir, a solar Grand Cru.
And in terms, how many varietals are actually planted on Brand?
So you can just make white wine on Grand Cru Brand. So the main variety is Riesling. After that, you have Gewürztraminer and Pinot Gris. You can also have Sylvaner and Pinot Noir, but you can have the appellation of Grand Cru Brand because Grand Cru Brand must have Riesling, Gewürztraminer, and Pinot Gris planted.
Okay, those are the only three varietals permitted on Brand. Okay, so Muscat, you're not allowed to have Muscat on Brand.
You can have Muscat on Brand, but you cannot do Grand Cru Brand with Muscat on the bottle. But you can make Muscat, but it's Muscat from Alsace.
And where does the name Brand come from?
In Alsace, in dialectic, Brand means fire. So it's a reference to this very solar characteristic. We have also a legend in Turkheim. The name Brand comes from the death of a dragon in the Middle Age. And so when I cannot remember the name of the guy who killed the dragon, but during his death, the dragon spread all the blood on the Grand Cru Brand soil. So the Grand Cru Brand soil is red and always very warm and dry. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, and just to go back to the soil type, sorry, could you just tell us what soil, what is the composition of the soil?
So here in Grand Cru Brand, we are on granitic soil. So granite is biotic, so name granite de Turkheim with 2 mica. The soil is also a little bit sandy, so it's very poor and dry. So if you want to make good wine on this type of soil and exposition, you have to have you need very low yield, like 30 or 40 hectoliters per hectare, and you also need a very deep root system. So here in Turkheim, we work with all the vines with more than 30 years old, because in the summer you don't have any water. Yeah.
Okay, so we had Louis talking about a very small yield for his circumstance Sauvignon Blanc. What type of yield would be looking for the Riesling?
Here we are on 30 hectoliters per hectare. Sorry, we talk with hectoliters per hectare, not ton per hectare. But I think it's 2.5 tons. I don't know if I'm very well at this, but
okay. So again, very small.
Very slow yield for yeah.
Okay, so the wine that we're going to be tasting is the 2017. Can you tell us about the 2017 vintage, please, Danielle?
Yeah, So 2017 is a good vintage for white wine. So we had cold spring, and after that, until August, we didn't add any water. So, but we had a cold night and warm day. So in Riesling, Pinot Gris, it's a good vintage. So the wine are very balanced with good acidity and good skin maturity. So you don't have sorry, well, you have good tartaric acidity in this type of wine and not too much alcohol. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the thing with Riesling as well, Riesling is one of these varieties that ages gracefully. How much life do you see in this wine?
So it's the particularity of these Grand Crus that the Gewürztraminer, Riesling, and Pinot Gris has good aging ability, but the wine are very open in their use. So you can enjoy a wine from Grand Cru Brant maybe 1 or 2 years after bottling, but you can also keep it in your cellar more than 10 years if you want. But if you open a bottle, the wine will be very aromatic.
I agree. I really love this wine. I think in terms of Riesling, it's got everything that sort of Riesling from Alsace should have. It's austere. Again, we talk about minerality, but it's lovely and dry, lovely and fresh. And it is fantastic to drink now, and it really is a food wine. But I know from experience, keeping this wine for a little bit longer as well helps to develop it. And for me, it's one of those unique wines in the fact that yes, you can drink it young, but you can also drink it with a bit of maturity. So a lovely, lovely wine. And if we were in Alsace today, what would we be drinking this with?
Me, I like to have seafood with that, but seafood require a little bit of residual sugar, like langoustine or prawn. You can also taste this wine with a more Alsatian food, like sauerkraut with 3 fish. It's a very good match. So I don't know if Emmanuel, you have another idea about that?
Maybe goat cheese to go to something completely different. A goat cheese with salad could match also.
And you've mentioned some fantastic matches there, but I think what also works really, really well with this, anything with a bit of spice, like a Thai style dish, I think is absolutely lovely.
Not too spicy because of the acidity of the Grand Cru, not to enhance too much the spiciness, but a little bit of spices, yes, will match also. Yeah.
Fantastic, excellent. Well, thank you both for joining us. Let me just see if there's any questions in the chat box for you. Lots of comments. So Remy from Le Gavroche, it might be cold in Alsace, but it's 8 degrees and glorious in Maidenhead. Louis Boutineau was drinking the 2010 Riesling Grand Cru brand over Christmas, and it was absolutely fantastic. Ronan Saban is commenting that it has great aging potential. Victor Bar is asking, what vessels is the wine fermented in?
Okay, so it's a personal choice, but on Riesling we choose steel tank, and all of the process which we choose a steel tank. So we don't have any wood or clay or something like that. We choose to have only steel tank. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's a good question. So that was Victor, and Victor is from Chez Bruce. So thank you for your question, Victor. Superb. Emmanuel, Danielle, thank you very much once again for joining us. If you can kindly mute yourselves, and I will now ask Nikki Moser to join us. So Nikki, if you are there, can you turn your video on and unmute yourself.
Yes, it's already done.
There we are. Fantastic. Hi, Nikki. How are you?
I'm from Austria.
And yes, so Nikki, so yeah, Austria. Now we would certainly have an idea in terms of the coldest place today might be in Kremstal. Temperature today in Kremstal?
It's not as cold as it is in Alsace. We had -5 this morning, and
Wow.
it's pretty nice and sunny outside. And they forecast around 1 degree, also like in Alsace. Fantastic day for pruning.
Yes, you mentioned before, so thank you very much for joining us. You were pruning before, and are you going to go back into the vineyards later and do a little bit of pruning?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we have new people, and it's important for me to show them how is the way we prune. This is a very important first step in the year.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the fantastic estate of Sepp Moser, please?
Yes, we have a very old history of winemaking. As far as I know, we're connected with wine since 17 generations. And for sure, one of the most famous guy of my ancestors was Mr. Lenz Moser, the inventor of the high training system of the vine. It was somewhere in the 50s, 60s, my uncle held. It was also, and it is still, a big wine company named after my grandfather Lenz Moser. Mostly wines that can be found in supermarkets, and my uncle held the winery, as my father always was responsible for the vineyards, and as a result of the wine scandal in the middle of the 80s, not because he was involved, but nevertheless, my uncle went bankrupt with the winery, and my father was standing alone with the vineyards. That's when the new system, the new structure came. My father decided to start from zero again under his own name, Sepp Moser. So it's a short form for Joseph. Got rid of a lot of vineyards and kept only the best in our two regions where we are. We live in the Kremstal region, which is Lower Austria, the Danube Valley, and we also own vineyards in the Neusiedlers area, in the Burgenland, very close to the Hungarian border. So on one side, it's mostly white wines, such as Grüne Veltliner and Riesling in Lower Austria, and on the other side is a big focus on red wines, with Zweigelt is our main variety for reds, and also, which is an absolute must in this region, sweet wines, noble sweet wines. Yes, yeah.
Okay, now, in terms of what you're doing, Nikki, as well, in the fact that it's sort of very similar to Vaticlu, you are now sort of, you're organic and you're biodynamic for a lot of your wines. And in fact, for some of your wines, you even operate naturally as well.
Yes, that's true. So we are Demeter certified with our estate. That means we are following the biodynamic rules in the vineyards, but also for vinification in the cellar for all of our wines. That means to reduce the interference as much as possible for all of our wines, but also our basic wines, the two so-called classic style wines, Grüne Veltliner and Zweigelt, they are only organic because up until now, in some years we purchased grapes, and we want to differ very carefully between the own production grape wines and those wines where we buy grapes in some years. So, and the third category, which is coming more and more, is we call them puristic style wines, is the wines which we vinify and finally bottle without any interference, just grapes. That means no sulfur, no filtration, no fining, no nothing, just grapes.
Fantastic, excellent, wow. And in terms of the wine that we're going to be looking at today, so the wine that we're looking at today is the Terrassen.
Grüne Veltliner von den Terrassen, from the terraces. Some of you might know our region a little bit. Most of the vines are planted on the more or less self-exposed slopes and terraces of Löss here in the Kremstal region. Löss is a glacially formed, very fine sand brought by the storms during the ice ages and compacted by the storms here, and which is quite interesting because it has two components, silicate as well as calcareous components, which are able to bring a lot of minerality and expression in the wine. And this wine of Grüne Veltliner is the main variety here in the Kremstal region with about 70%. Also in our state, it's the most important by far. Is made from a selection of different vineyard sites on terraces. So it's not a single vineyard wine. It is it's a regional wine or a village wine. You might call it village wine. Von den Terrassen. So all of the vines are planted on terraces.
Okay. And in terms of your sort of your biodynamic philosophy, can you just give us a little sort of insight on sort of the things that you will do in the vineyards just to get the best out of the grapes?
So the basis is organic production. That means no use of synthetic or systemic sprayings, no herbicides, of course. But in addition to that, we try to get as much as possible to a very good balance. And in order to get that, we use the biodynamic preparations, 500, 501 horn manure and horn silicate, which you might already heard about. And also we use compost. We have compost from horse and cow manure, horse manure here in the Kremstal and cow manure in the Burgenland area, which we mix together with our press recipes, and also it's made with special biodynamic preparations. So the aim is to get as much as possible a balance of the soil, a balance of the vine with its surroundings. We also work a lot with to get in more biodiversity. We try to plant trees and hedges and have cover crops, which is as much as possible diverse, many flowering, deep rooting, covering plants. So we try to get rid of the monoculture system of the vine as much as possible, and to allow a lot of other things, because that gives you a better balance in the vineyards.
And are you following the lunar cycle to determine when you do certain things?
We follow the vineyard, the lunar circle, but the planet circle also, for the most important things, like when we spray our biodynamic preparations, we clearly and strictly follow the lunar circle. So as we're working with fruit plants, so vine is a fruit plant, we mostly work in the vineyards for the preparations on so-called flower or fruit days. So the quality of the days are divided in 4 different days. And so with the experience we made and what we can take out of the literature, these fruit or flower days are the best days to support our flower plant, the vine, as much. But also more and more in the cellar, there's a big difference if you have full moon or new moon, for example. What an impact you get when you, for example, rack a wine, or if you sulfur the wine at the right point, it is gives a different result as if you sulfur it maybe not at the right point. But you have to find it out for yourself.
Okay, so the wine that we're tasting is the 2019 vintage.
Yes, this is 19 vintage, which is an outstanding vintage. It's in the row of all the 9 vintages. So 99, 2009, and 19 vintage, 98 also was, 89 was also a fantastic vintage. Fortunately, 2019 also was a great vintage. Was a rather warm vintage, but it was not as dry as the previous vintages, 17 and 18, which were among the driest in the last decades. And this is interesting because it's a very true Grüne Veltliner. It has everything I would say a Grüne Veltliner should have. Is a certain spiciness in the nose. What is said to be typical for the Grüne Veltliner is the white pepper. Also maybe a little bit of fennel. And it's bone dry. A true classic Grüne Veltliner should be bone dry, in my opinion, because it should be a companion to many different foods and dishes. And 19 vintage was a quite fully ripe vintage, so the acidity is well balanced. It's not very high, and yeah.
Scott's asking, how many bottles of 2019 were produced?
It was around 30,000 bottles.
Okay, so because this is one of your entry wines, and you have, just to emphasize as well, you have single vineyard wines within the portfolio as well, don't you?
Yes, we have, regarding Grüne Veltliner, we have 3 different single vineyards. This is Gebling, Schnabel, and Breiterein. All of them very historic vineyard sites. We have a history comparable to the history in Burgundy, for example. Gebling was first mentioned, as far as we know, in the year 1284 as a vineyard site.
Okay. Now, Paolo from Wilkinson's is asking, how were the wines fermented? On the skins or lees contact? And how long does the process take?
Yes, so far we did not ferment any of our wines on the skins. We might choose skin contact for a few hours, but mostly not for this wine, because for the Grüne Veltliner von den Terrassen, it's mostly processed quite quickly. That means that the grapes come in and they're pressed more or less immediately, because we want to keep the freshness as much as possible. And then it's taken into stainless steel tanks after what is that called in English? Decanting of the cloudy components of the juice, de breuvage en français. It's fermented spontaneously in a stainless steel tank, and we have rather warm fermentations, like 18 to 20 degrees, in order to allow a very typical character of the varietal. We are not at all searching for candy fruit.
Okay. Just a comment there from Melania from Medler. It's a very good textbook example of Grüne. And I definitely agree. I think, for me, this wine, it has this sort of citrus, sort of green apple character, plus also that sort of spiciness that you talk. We always sort of mention things like sort of horseradish, and it certainly has that sort of little spicy note there in the background, but very clean, very precise.
That's very typical for Grüne Veltliner. So that's the spiciness, which differs also Grüne Veltliner very much from Riesling, which is much more on the fruity side.
There's another comment from Sophie from 67 Pall Mall. Lovely wine. The texture is fantastic with the spice and the green notes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So again, the question that I've been asking a few people, and you did sort of touch on it there. If we were in Kremstal today with you and we had this open, what would we enjoy this wine with?
I would say it's a very good companion to very classic Austrian dishes, such as Wiener Schnitzel, of course. It might be also used for Tafelspitz, if you know that. It's a very typical Viennese dish, which is made from in a soup boiled beef. with vegetables. That could be a good choice. But also, you could simply take it with charcuterie, and also with goat cheese and salad would be working pretty well. So this is a very flexible wine. Maybe also a little bit of Asian spices could fit well to this wine, although it's not sweet, so not too much, but a little bit of Asian flavors could be fitting well.
Fantastic. Another question in from Tongi from Comptoir Cafe and Blanfard Comptoir. In terms of the vines, will the vines have an influence with regards to the flavor profile of the actual wine, or does it depend on the vintage?
Both.
Okay.
The fact is that Grüne Veltliner was used as a mass production variety up until, let's say, 60s, 70s, even 80s. So the clones that were planted in these decades were mostly clones that were very productive. Unfortunately, the type of Grüne Veltliner they were searching for in those decades, still in the 70s, 80s, was not much of what we are searching for nowadays. So young vines from these very productive clones would give a completely different style, which is much more on the Sauvignon-like flavor. Fortunately, we're still working with a lot of vines up to 50 years of age. But fortunately, when they calm down a little bit to a normal yield, also the flavors are back to a normal Grüne Veltliner flavor. But also the vintage, of course, influences a lot of the flavor. Warmer vintages would be more in the maybe Burgundian style, which counts especially for the single vineyard wines, while as the cooler vintages would be more the green aromas. But we are not searching for green aromas at all. From my opinion, green aromas are unripe aromas. So even in cooler vintages, we try to work on getting the aromas riper, also with the help of biodynamic preparations.
Fantastic, excellent, Nikki. As always, it's fascinating talking to you. You are one of the nicest men in the wine world, and I always get fascinated whenever I visit you when you show your passion. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for you all joining us.
Fantastic, thank you, Nikki. Okay, sorry. Oh, there's just another question might have just come in. Spare me 1 second. Again, it's a comment from Ronan. It has broadness and texture that you find in Camtal and Kremstal, with more minerality than you would find in Wachau. Is that a fair enough assessment, Nikki?
I think you could find a lot of minerality in the Wachau. They have the basis for it because they're working mostly on primary rock, so the basis is there. It's only the question what the people make out of it. You should know that in the western part of the Wachau, the maturity is much later than we have here in the Kremstal. So it's much more. It's 20 kilometers to the west or so. So it's a narrow valley of the Wachau. So some of the producers are counting with and they're working with botrytis, and that's nothing for us. We are if there's botrytis, we select it out very carefully. So to get the purity, the minerality in the wines. But if you want to make very full-bodied, creamy wines, botrytis might help. But it's of course it's lowering down the minerality without any doubt.
Sorry, I actually misread Ronan's question there. He's actually suggesting less minerality than Wachau.
Less, sorry.
Sorry, that was my mistake. I read it out wrong.
Sorry.
Okay. No problem. Okay, Nikki, once again, sincerely, many thanks. As I say, I do love your passion and I love your wines. So thank you very much. If you can now sort of kindly mute yourself and turn your video off, and we will ask the legend that is Jeff Chilcott and Alberto De Grezi to join us next. Once again, thank you, Nikki. And hopefully now Jeff and Alberto will be with us.
Ecco, pronto?
Okay,
Fantastic. Hi, gents.
Buongiorno.
How are you?
Very good.
fantastic.
Excellent.
It's snowing very
Now,
here.
now, in terms of coldness, you've got the record today, I believe, Jeff.
Yeah, I tell you, Nigel, a few months ago, I was thinking, you know, can I get back to New Zealand, which was going to get tricky as the year passed. But I had a feeling that we were going to have quite an extreme winter this year. And so it's happened and it hasn't finished. So we've already had a lot of snow. And the important thing is this year it snowed, but the sun's come out, but the snow's staying around. So we have a lot of snow, which is a bit icy now. So probably after a lot of mild winters, that's pretty important for the land this year to have the water resources. And, you know, we're only the second week of January. So I would say before springtime, we're going to get a bit more as well. So no New Zealand suntan for me this year, Nigel.
And it was your birthday last week, so you had to stay in Piemonte for your birthday.
Yeah, I did a few long lunches, not long dinners.
Ah, right. I was going to say there are worse places to be than Piemonte, Jeff.
Sì, vero, vero.
So Alberto, thank you very much for joining us also.
And thank you very much to you for inviting us to this event. We really appreciate it, and we are very proud to do it.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about your estate, please?
Yes. This is Martinenga, is one of the fourth farmers we have in the Tenute Cisasinari dei Marchesi di Gresi. When I started, it was 73, in the sense that my family, for generations, they were just supposed to sell the grapes and not having any relation with the winemaking. So we assigned the property of Martinenga, which is the largest one and the more important in very hard to Barbaresco, so very well considered from the neighbors, first of all, and from many others during this 40, almost 50 years now that I'm taking care about this property, the family. I'm the junior brother of 4 brothers, but nobody else is taking care about it. So I'm the only one to take with my sons and daughter now. And we are very happy, you know, I'm very lucky man, because I realized that it was a shame to leave this beauty, because it's also fine, it's also bello here to visit, to stay. I don't know if the camera can turn a little bit, Jeffrey, because outside we have the snow and, you know, sunny day, very cold, okay, but very fabulous area anyway. So when I started with the Dolcetto grapes and the variety planted mostly in our Monterebaldo, at the top of the hill, with the house of the family on top, which is called Villa Giulia, the name of my grandmother. Anyway, and that was a challenge because I never been on the market with my wines. So I was just, you know, a young tractor driver, enthusiast, feeling the ground, feeling the fields, and also the vines. Okay, we are having many others, you know, things to do. I was studying. I was staying in Milan mostly with my family, but as soon as it was possible for me, I was really happy when I was here to spend, you know, in the countryside, some relationship, something fantastic. So I started in 73. The very first, the following year, excuse me, the Dolcetto was ready for the market to you know, to check the market, what it was about, you know, a new label together with many others that are much many today, more than before. We were only 5 or 6 good brands here in Piedmont, and I can tell you the name, but you know better than me. So we were at the beginning. In the 74, the Nebbiolo was appearing on the market. This label is the wine that today we have like to pour now for the tasting. And this is like not a second wine, it's another interpretation of the Vines Nebbiolo versus the Barbaresco, which has the same similar label, if you see, a little bit different. The color, the paper are different. This is white, and this is instead is a cru, light cru. But you know, the Barbaresco, of course, aged in wood for 3 years and then is released on the market. The Nebbiolo at the time was like 2 years with us and then released. But nowadays we have this Nebbiolo that always been made only with stainless steel. So skin contact, a few days, not many. So practically I was supposed to check the market and really making the people appreciating the quintessence, the fragrance of the Nebbiolo variety, which is supposed to be considered also a little bit aggressive in the sense of the tannins. But in Martinenga, we always have been lucky because it's a vineyard exposed to south. Look, it's like an amphitheater, and the different colors of the map shows different crews. Martinenga is the major part here, and then, excuse me, major part, okay? And in the middle there is all the vineyard of Martinenga or Nebbiolo Martinenga. This is the semi right side for you. Is the
how big is the Martinenga, Alberto?
Cambros and the Gaillon.
How big? Quanti ettari?
In this vineyard is 12 hectares, but all the property is 25 hectares only. No, we are talking about very small, how to say, properties. In Piedmont, it's always been like that. In Tuscany, average, you have 10 times more hectares, for a normal, it's normal. Here, the concentration of the vineyard is almost, very well considered. And we have a very important mandatory for Nebbiolo exposure to south or southeast, southwest, but south. And, the white varieties you can plant in the northern part or the west part, maybe better. Nowadays, we also have assisted the Nino. I think since 2003, which was very warm vintage, we had sometimes, very warm vintages, not hot, but warm. And so we have to manage this fact. But now for the remaining, situation, is Jeff talking about you, about the wines?
Well, we can continue. I can ask you, in terms of the name Martinenga, where does the name Martinenga come from?
Martinenga is a very old name. It seems that during the Roman period was called Villa Martis, the house of Mars, the god of the war. And here was like a place in which the Barbarica Silva, the forest of oaks, were cut to make some, to burn for making bricks. Yeah, strange story. That was the thing that we know since that period. Then during the how to say, barbarian invasions, it was varying in Martiningen like the German, and then Martinenga. So something related with Mars, the god of the war.
Fantastic.
And we set the property in 1797. Since that moment, we had the crazy are only Martinenga.
Okay. And in terms of the vineyards, Jeff, for those people that unfortunately haven't visited, it's almost like an amphitheater, isn't it? It's sort of
it's a very unique piece of land. I think Alberto was mentioning before that, back in the days before the family started making wine, all the people would do their shopping coming to Martinenga. It was a good place to. Yeah, it's a good place to buy Nebbiolo grapes. And if you think that, one of Italy's, if not the oldest co-op of Italy is in the village of Barbaresco, a co-op that started making single vineyard wines in 1967. So quite forward thinking for its time. You got to realize I came here by mistake 30 years ago. There were maybe 45 labels of Barbaresco. Now we're about 160. So, and Barbaresco is like a quarter of the size of Barolo. So there's a lot more growers' children that now make wine. It was possibly, in the old days to create a wine like Barolo or like we do Barbaresco for the marketplace. But the wine we're tasting today plays a very special and important role for the market, because first when I came here, I remember going to a tasting even to Paris, and a lot of the sommeliers were not feeling familiar with, even in America. Most of the Piedmontese people that left Piedmonte ended up in places maybe not promoting wine and food. So it always was a little bit of a secluded area. not so frequented, only in the autumn months for the truffle festival. And when the weather gets colder, as you know, Nigel, your appetite and your desire for drinking changes a little bit. So today we're showing you the 2019. So essentially, like Alberto said, no oak and aging in this wine. This was bottled in the springtime of 2020. So we already have the 2020 in tank. Actually, what happens is after steel, it sits in big old cement tanks for a number of months. So we will prepare the 20 in another around springtime. This is a wine that has quite a popular following, and we export it to many, many countries. I think the process that we do, we take the lower parts of the slopes of the Martinenga. Tanks might have 5 to 7, 8 days maximum maceration. And then we press it off when we feel the tannins are right. Because we know we're going to bottle this wine in the springtime, and already the market is waiting for it a few weeks later.
Exactly. You drink practically the elegance of Martinenga vineyard in the sense of the grape variety Nebbiolo here, without even you don't have the disturb of the wood, which you can get in the Barbaresco, of course. But this is an easy, simple method to drink it. And you drink mostly elegance, because even the tannins are so smooth and very pleasant. Yeah. You can also have it with fish, not only with meat or or cheeses. So it's very popular wine for us, creating. And if I call the market, they ask me to make Nebbiolo, 100% Nebbiolo, not even Barbaresco, because it's very pleasant. It's very pleasant. Has a great success.
Just to recap, and I think what's really important about this wine is that its designation, if you like, is Langhe, but it's actually produced from grapes within Barbaresco. And should you age this wine?
Yeah, actually
declare it as Barbaresco.
It's a very good question, Nigel. I think if you go back to the days of selling grapes, if you were a grape grower in a great region of the world, you were going to sell your grapes because your family sold them to make the highest quality possible. Whereas to make a wine like this, you're giving the opportunity to the market first to get closer to the Nebbiolo grape. Another very important thing is one of the first wines from the last vintage to go on the market. So you have an introduction to 2019, which was super vintage for us. We've got some magnificent Barbarescos in the barrels now. It's a good stepping stone. I think, Nigel, you get people hooked on the Nebbiolo, then you start to show them Barbaresco and Barolo. Maybe that's for I think in the old days, people would buy a Barolo Barbaresco and a sommelier would have to wait 5 to 10 years. A private customer would wait maybe even longer. But I think
these 19 years, it'll be more sexy than the 18. I see something more spicy. And it was a great, great vintage for us. 19. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, with regards to the wine as well, how much life is in this wine? I know.
Yeah, good.
People tend to drink it young, but
I tell you, we've had bottles going back a long, long time. And even if you keep this wine for like 4 to 5 years, you start to pick up almost a bit of a Barbaresco. You get the soil character from the Martinenga property starts to come through. Now, to keep a wine that is not expensive for 4 to 5 years, in this day and age, because this is a wine that does end up being sold by the glass, which is a good way to propose your Barbarescos as well. But I mean, I think we are, and everybody listening and watching has tasted a whole variety of Langhe Nebbiolos, because in the more recent years, it's become a very, very popular category at a very nice price point. But would you believe over Christmas, I spent time in the family hotel. I found would you believe, a 1977 Martinenga Nebbiolo. Because it was a tough year, so a lot of the Barbaresco went into it. But again, we're talking about a wine that didn't have a long time on the skins and had aged, so. But I mean, to answer your earlier question, if you keep this 5 to 6 years, no trouble. But it can even go longer if you're patient.
Yeah, we've always been maybe very attentive to select our grapes in terms of the vintage is not good. You cannot have a Barbaresco, and the example Jeffrey gave you is 77. We never had a Barbaresco bottle, only Nebbiolo.
What I really love about this wine is it's very expressive and very forward and it's complex, but it's super easy to drink as well. It's one of those wines that you open it and you have a glass, and then maybe half an hour later you've drank the whole bottle. It's that good. I really
Yeah,
like it.
Exactly. Very
I
pleasant.
think, you know, in a world that everybody knows very well, Dolcetto and Barbera, which are fantastic examples here also from our properties and from other friends. But I mean, Nebbiolo just gives you a little bit more of that dryness in the mouth. You know, we press off, I told you that the tannin management is important. So you cannot take the acidity and tannin out of Nebbiolo to make it easier for a modern market. You have to retain it. And plus the fact this also gives a chance for the wine to age a little bit as well. And, you know, it's a super popular category.
It's a very elegant drinking, you know,
Yeah.
he has a class, this wine, more than Barbera and Dolcetto.
You
which
get a lot of the
also-
floral, you get that nice sort of cherry bite to it. It's very rounded, you know, and for an unoaked or less macerated wine, it has quite a long finish as well.
Fantastic.
And it's very recognizable.
Mm.
You can.
Okay, there's a couple of questions that have come in. I'm going to read you out some of the questions. Spare me 1 second. This is where I'm going to...
I'm reading them too.
Oh, you're reading them too. Brilliant.
Yeah, we know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had a comment from Matteo. Matteo is from Edition Hotel. It's Berners Tavern. Incidentally, Matteo recently passed his Master Sommelier exam. So many congratulations to Matteo. And his comment is that top wine, pure Nebbiolo, floral with delicate texture. In terms of, Remy asked the question with regards to price. So well, I can answer this question for Remy. This is probably about 1/3 of the price of regular Barbaresco. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that fair? Yeah, okay. So yes, it's a good, as Jeff said before, a good sort of introduction into Nebbiolo. Spare me 1 second. For some reason, I've gone all the way down up to the top rather than to the bottom. Okay. Melania is asking, so Melania from Medler, how many bottles of Langhe Nebbiolo do you produce?
as many as we can. But normally we've got a couple of tanks of, like, you know, we get up to 23 to 25,000 bottles. You know,
No, not
Yeah.
70,
Yeah,
30.
yeah. Depending on the vintage. Well, don't forget, some of the other producers before were talking about drier years, and, you know, obviously I think with the winter that we're having, we should have a good production, you know, come springtime. But I mean, then don't forget also, Nigel, it's very important. If you've got too many grapes, you don't want to overcrop. We actually allow some of these vines from the bottom rows of Martinenga to maybe produce an extra bunch or two, because we're not really affecting the quality, but we can, you know, achieve a little bit more quantity. When you're looking at summertime, when you are making your Barbaresco wines, you know, maybe if there's extra grapes, maybe an odd bunch or two falls on the ground. You know, don't forget, Nebbiolo is one of the biggest bunches in the world.
Yeah,
it's the first to grow and the last to pick. So, and you know, it was known for its sometimes a little bit challenging acidity, challenging tannin. So you always had to be patient. I think with the hard work and the quality vintages we've had, everyone's been fine tuning and not taking anything away from Nebbiolo, but trying to capture even more and achieving the balance. You know, I think in the future, Nigel, if it gets warmer, some of the Italian grapes like Nebbiolo maybe have an advantage, because we've got a big canopy. You know, we've got big bunches. We can cover up. It's a bit like being at the seaside. You know, if it's a hot day, we'll put on a shirt or go under an umbrella. You know, there are parts of the world where it's getting warmer. Where's the protection from the sun? You know, so.
And we do this to improve this. So practically, the Nebbiolo has another function. Is like we play like first we harvest this and the lower part of the vineyard, leaving another week maybe or 10 days for the Barbaresco, and then the best cases, so 30,000 or 30,000, 60. Then to arrive to 100 more or less, maybe 80, not 100, is the Gaillon here and the Cangros, which are two plots selected by the vineyard, not because we do something different or something special in the cellar, but because the vineyard itself, you know, the Nebbiolo has a great function. He is able to read any meter square of the ground. So one vine can play another role distance very, 10 meters maximum. So it's incredible. Nebbiolo is fantastic for that fact. But we are very happy to do
Excellent. Just a couple of comments that have just come in. So Dan Loughlin from Bull and Bear says that he likes to enjoy the Langhe Nebbiolo slightly chilled in the summer months.
Yes, you will find, even now, you go to a wine bar expecting to see a wine fridge full of white wine, but there's a fridge full of lighter red wines as well. And I think, it's very adaptable also in the summer. It's not let's say, a wine just for autumn winter food. This works well. I've had it with all sorts of different dishes, and so it's very adaptable at the table and served slightly chilled. Yeah, perfect.
And Ronan's commenting that it's great as a by the glass option.
Yes, for sure. I think in a category where obviously Pinot Noir commands a lot of attention, Nebbiolo has definitely found a place in a lot of Pinot Noir wine lists or people's wine cellars. A lot of the people that come to visit us, you ask them what they collect at home. A lot of people say they like things like Pinot Noir. So I think, as Alberto was saying before, the comparison between the two regions is quite similar because everything is very small. But going from one place to another, things change very quickly.
Fantastic. Stefan Cobbold from Pollen Street Social is commenting that it's a cracking wine. Charles Karen Brown, delicious. There was one final question, I think, which I may have gone past. Sorry, excuse me. Oh yes, a question from Sophie. What would you pair this wine with? So Sophie is from 67 Pall Mall.
Yeah, I think if the people have been to Piemonte, or you should all come and visit us when we can all get back to a normal way of life and enjoy traditional antipasto in Piemonte is quite a special, but even with the great pasta we make. But I mean, I've tried this with light Asian. Alberto said even with fish, you could do it with maybe even with like a fish soup or something like that. It would work quite well. The lighter cheeses that we have. But I mean, in general, it's I've tried it with a lot of different things, so it's quite adaptable at the table.
Fantastic, excellent. Alberto, Jeff, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing wines, lovely wines, and we look forward to seeing Jeff. Jeff is sort of known by most of the sommeliers, so we look forward to seeing you in the UK at some point, Jeff.
Yeah, good luck, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, ci vediamo presto. There's a few Italians out there I can see by the list.
We need to reopen the restaurants.
Yeah,
here in Italy and in the UK also. So,
fantastic. Excellent.
So
well, thank you very much. If you can now kindly turn off your video and mute yourself. And we're going to go to Diego next. So Diego, can you switch your video on and unmute yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm here already.
Fantastic. Hi, Diego. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Very good. Thank you very much.
Happy New Year to you.
Say again?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, yeah. Happy New Year. We're starting the new year with a lot of expectations and hoping it's going to be good, better than the one before. It's not easy for 21 to be better, so that's for sure.
Excellent. So, where are you, Diego? Tell us where you are.
I'm now in the north of Spain. I mean, I live in the north in San Sebastian. So I'm getting out a bit of the coldness of Rioja for the moment. Last week we have really cold days. But now I spoke with the guys at the winery this morning and we are below 2 degrees. But here in the north we are cold, but no snow. So it's good for that. Fantastic.
And can you tell us a little bit about the amazing state, the amazing estate of Valenciso?
Sure. Valenciso started, we started 26 years ago. It started like a dream of Luis and Carmen, both two founders, that before working for many years in a quite traditional Rioja house, they thought about the idea of thinking the wines from Rioja in a different way. As you probably know, all of the wines from Rioja are really classified by the way of we age the wines. So they thought about thinking in a different way and thinking more about the grape variety, Tempranillo, of course, as being the main characters of the wines that we will produce. They really thought about the origins and a lot of the influence we got from the French people after the phylloxera when they came down here to the region. and try to show more of the elegance, finesse, and delicacy expression of the grape variety, rather than be more focused in the aging style, have as the main importance the grape variety Tempranillo. Okay.
So whereabouts in Rioja are you based, Diego?
We're in Rioja Alta. We're in a small town named Ollauri, which is 4 kilometers from Haro. You all probably are really familiar with Haro, which is the traditional capital of Rioja. We're just outside of that city, in Ollauri.
Okay. Now, in terms of Valencia, so again, you operate this very sort of, dare I say, sort of, you have this organic approach to winemaking. Yep. You try and do everything in a sort of a natural way, certainly low levels of sulfur. Can you just tell us about your philosophy, please?
Yeah, mainly the idea when Luis and Carmen started, and the idea we follow is, of course, is to always pay the most attention into the vineyard. Okay, we try to make all the efforts of the winery, and actually most of the people at the winery, we actually work in the vineyard. We're only few people at the winery itself, because we truly believe that the essence of the wines we produce, they have to represent the origin, that kind of the terroir concept of where we are located. You have to think that we're in Rioja Alta. We are in around between 500 to 600 meters of altitude, 100% clay calcareum soils with a lot of calcium content. So the idea is to add all those elements to be part of the expression of the wines. So when we started with 3 hectares, nowadays, after all these 23 years, we have 24 hectares. We thought about working with sustainable viticulture. The idea was to make it as much natural as possible in some way. So we have been working with this philosophy and following organic practices, okay? We are 100% organic. Unfortunately, we always thought about organic being part of the way we do. So now we're in the last stages of getting the certification. So in 2 years, we're going to be 100% certified organic. But most of the things we do in terms of working natural and avoiding any artificial things in the vineyards is not to lose the essence of the Tempranillo where it's coming from. Okay, we want everyone in some way when they taste our wines to kind of understand that freshness, that delicacy that our Tempranillo, which is another Tempranillo, gets from the vineyard. You have to think that where we are located, it has a special thing because we get an effect, a wind in summer called the north, and this wind really cools down the vineyard. So you get more of the freshness and more of the elegance of the grape variety.
And you're very unique, aren't you, at Valencia? So in the fact that you don't make Tinto, you don't make Crianza, you don't make a Gran Reserva. It's about one style of wine. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. The idea, I mean, to be honest with you, we thought about producing a wine to follow the idea of the Tempranillo, and we have to land the wine in some of the classifications we have. That's why we mostly focus in the production of the Reserva. I mean, 95% is one wine, which is our Valenciso Reserva. This one here that we started in 1998. So we're mainly a winery wine, which all of the efforts and everything we do and we plan is mostly focused in that production, to be honest.
Excellent. And you produce a little bit of white as well?
Yeah, we have a small production of a white. It's only around 3,000 bottles, and the white is a matter of I mean, we found these grapes. I mean, we were working with really old vines of Tempranillo. We found 100-year-old vines of Viura and Grenache Blanc that in some ways is part of the heritage of the old vines in the region. So instead of not working with those, we decided to produce this small quantity of this white, and we decided to make it different because it's fermented in Russian oak for 9 months. So it's a different way, again, a different concept of a white from Rioja, because we try to not to show that traditional style of white Rioja. It's more about to show the expression of the grape varieties from all vines.
And like many of the producers that are on today, Valencia, so it's a family operation. It's 2 families, is that correct?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So could you explain the name Valenciso then?
Yeah, Valenciso, because it was founded by Luis and Carmen. It's Carmen Enciso and Luis Valentin, so it's Valenciso, because it was their idea of merging the last name to create the winery. But the interesting thing about Valenciso, as you said, is a group of a lot of families, because when we started the winery, we never thought about getting the money from the banks. We thought about getting the money from friends and family. So I always say to people that Valenciso in some ways had crowded founded winery, because we have a lot of friends and family that are part of the winery, and they all help us in order to keep this idea of this long-term project, because Valenciso, the way we do things, the way we produce the wines, is a really long-term thinking of aging the wines before the wines are released. So that's why we have been able to follow this this strategy, if I can say it that way, of this way of having the winery for such a long time.
So just remind me, when was the first vintage for Valenciso?
1998.
98. Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of the style that you produce, how would you describe for anyone that's not tried Valenciso Reserva before? How would you describe it as modern? It's certainly not traditional style, is it?
Yeah, that's a good question. If people ask me about the style of where we classify ourselves, I think we have built a bridge between the modern and the traditional style, because we try in some way, we bring all that fruit expression from the modern Rioja, but we also bring all that elegance from the traditional Rioja. So in some way, that's where we put Valenciso in between both styles. It's neither modern, neither traditional. I think it's the bridge of the two things from the two ideas of modern and traditional.
Okay, that's a good assessment.
Yeah.
So we've got now the 2012 vintage. How was the 2012 vintage?
It was good vintage for us, but in general, it wasn't a good vintage. You have to remember that 12 vintage was a really dry year, really dry and hot. Actually, we got 50% of less rain compared to average rains in the region. But the good thing is, like at the end before the harvest, end of September, it was fantastic weather conditions. So it gave really good conditions for the grapes to ripe. So we end up with a lot of concentration, small berries, and really good quality in terms of the grapes we harvested. You have to think also that we in Valenciso, we work with really low yields. We are always trying to be below 5 tons per hectare, because we want to achieve that quality and concentration in the fruit. So in this vintage, our yields were 4.5 tons per hectare. So really low quantity, but high quality.
Okay, and this is it the fermentation occurs naturally, or
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm explaining you. The way we do, I mean, the Tempranillo and the Reserva is coming from 17 parcels. Average of the vines will be between 60 and 80 years old. We will do hand harvest, but we harvest in a small basket of 10 kilos, okay? Because what we do is, like, when we get into the winery, we will select the bunches, there will be the steam, and then we will start the fermentation in concrete deposits, okay? We're the only winery that in Rioja that only use concrete for fermentation. And the idea of this small basket, because we don't squeeze the berry for fermentation. We want the full berry to go into the concrete deposits. So naturally it will break with the fermentation. So we create kind of a slight carbonic maceration effect, and we try to get more of the aromas and the flavors of the grape. Also, you have to think that for us, we don't give much importance into the color. We give a lot of importance into the acidity of the wine. So we will never press the cap. The only contact that the wine will be with the skins is going to be when we do the pumping over. Okay, we only use natural yeast for fermentation, and also when it comes to the malolactic fermentation, that will take place as well in the deposits. We don't hurry the malolactic. We just wait until naturally the temperature goes up in the winery. So that's why our wine stay quite a long time in the fermentation deposits before they go into the oak. Okay. So we'll finish the fermentation both. We will get the wine out and we will put it into age in French oak. In average, the wine stays around 19 to 20 months. Okay, in 12 vintage, it was 19 months in the oak. We use 1/3 new, medium toast. Of course, the idea of the oak is to be integrated in the wine and never lose that expression of the Tempranillo. Finish the aging in the oak, and the wine will go back in concrete for another 2 years. Okay, here the idea is to keep the fruit, but get the tannins to get more soft, more velvety, and bring more of the elegance into the wine. So because of those 2 years, we never clarified or we never filtered the wines, okay? We have a lot of time to get this natural sedimentation. And then when these 2 years are finished, we bottle the wine and we keep it in the cellar for 2 years more before the wines are released.
Fantastic. So it meets all the criteria, the minimum
All the
criteria.
criteria
Yeah.
for Reserva. That's why we are in the Reserva classification. We have longer time of aging, but the time that the wine is in concrete is not approved by the Consejo Regulador, so it's not part of let's say Gran Reserva classification.
But if you were to keep the wine in the cellar for another couple of months, you could actually technically declare it as Gran Reserva, could you not?
No, we cannot, because to be in Gran Reserva, it needs to be a minimum 24 months in the oak.
Okay, and you spend how much, sorry?
Between 19 and 20 months.
Right, okay. All right, so you've described the vintage. Describe the wine for us, please, Diego.
Yeah, the idea here in our Tempranillos, of course, at the beginning, Valenciso wines are very shy in the nose, okay? I always have to say that, because when we look after all the time that the wine has been the aging, it gives a lot of a shy, but the wine is a wine that always said that it will grow in the glass, okay? So you get all of the fruit expression, the red fruit, kind of strawberry, and kind of all the licorice from the Tempranillo, which is a really fruit wine. We try to look of that fruit expression of the wine. And then you get to understand more of the complexity of the oak and the spices in the palate, okay? For us, acidity is really, really important in the wine. Actually, our key thing when we control in vinification is acidity. During fermentation and during the press of the wine, for example, instead of doing, we do a cremant process, so we do longer press, a shorter pressure. So we try to avoid any harsh tannins, because the acidity is really important. So the idea of this wine is to get all this fresh acidity and get balance with the alcohol with the long finish. I mean, we're always impressed when we drink an old Valenciso. Let's say you're already drinking vintage 12, and it's still really fresh, really alive, and it's really kind of juicy wine, which is really impressed, and it's kind of the most important characteristic of the Tempranillo.
A comment there from Remy from Le Gavroche. He thinks it's really nice, but he says, in his opinion, this wine has at least another 10 years.
10 or 20 years. I mean, we're really impressed all the time when we drink the old Valencisos, and I can prove if you store the wine in good conditions that 20 years the wine will be fantastic. That's for sure.
Superb. And the question that I've been asking a few people: what would you like to enjoy this wine with, Diego?
Well, Tempranillo. I mean, I would always get this question asked. I always said about with meat, with some pasta, with everything. But I always said to people that when you think about Rioja, you have to put yourself into the Spanish cuisine. Okay, if you think about all the Spanish cuisine that is around, it's really eclectic and really it varies a lot during the different areas in Spain. And you can see that Rioja wines are the most drink wines within Spain. So at the end, you get to see that this style of wines with this high acidity and this freshness is really versatile in terms of food pairing. But always with some chorizo, with potatoes, with some meat, with some light stews. I mean, a lot of things can work really perfectly with the Tempranillo, and especially with the acidity it has, is really match any different kind of food.
I personally love this wine with lamb. I think, lamb.
Yeah.
And then also anything with beans or anything rustic,
sure.
casserole, fantastic. A question from Adam, from Man Behind the Curtain in Leeds. Where specifically do you source the Russian oak from?
The Russian oak is coming from Krasnodar area near Sochi. There's a forest there. And they are the guys that the forest is the same species as the one that grows in Bordeaux. So the only difference are the soils. So you're looking for a very, the only difference is the weather, because soils are really similar. So the weather has been really cold. You're getting a oak that grows really slow, so a really tight grain. That's why it helped us a lot in order to produce the white. And the barrels are produced in France, okay? We work with Serge Moreau, which is kind of the guys that are really working with the Russian oak for many years. So that's where our barrels are sourced in terms of cooperage.
Fantastic. Excellent. Diego, thank you very much indeed for your time, and thank you very much for describing your estate and your fantastic 2012. We were talking before, and I believe you've also got a bit of snow in Rioja as well. Is that right?
Yeah. Still, last week was hot. It was much of snow. Now it's less, but we still have some snow in the vineyard, which is fantastic because of some water in the vines. It's always good, especially this time. Also, a good thing for us, we haven't started pruning yet. We do a late pruning, so it's also even better for us. So we're looking for start pruning end of February. So weather conditions now, to be honest, they're perfect for the vineyards.
Excellent. And for those people that obviously have this glass in front of them, once this wine is open, how long would you say that this wine will stay nice and fresh when it's open?
When it's open, 2 days probably.
Yeah.
More, yeah. It's really surprising. I mean, probably 2 days open, the wine will still be fantastic.
But do you ever leave it for 2 days, or is it finished before 2 days?
It's finished in half an hour.
Thank you, Diego. Diego, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you again for your passion, and we very much hopefully look forward to seeing you again at some point in the UK, or if anybody is coming over to Rioja, we will happily organize a visit for anyone that's in the area. But thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Oh, there's just one more. There's a comment there from Julio from Ori, basically thanking you for your time, Diego. So
thank you.
Excellent. All right. Okay. Next, if you can just mute Diego, that'd be great. And also close your video. And then the next person we're going to look up is the legend that is Jan Pettersson in Jerez. Jan, are you there? I hope Jan's there. I did say this could actually get to an Alan Partridge moment, and I think now is the time. So hopefully Jan is with us. Bear with me 1 second. Yeah, the comments are coming in. Aha, brilliant. All right, bear with me 1 second. Let me just see if Jan is still on this call. Jan, where are you, Jan? Bear with me 1 second. For some reason, well, I'm hoping Jan hasn't dipped out. Jan is, there we are. Jan is coming back in. For some reason, he must have gone out, but there we go. Hopefully he's coming back in. Jan.
Nigel, you know, the problem was that Bea was just calling me.
Right, okay. So sorry, everybody.
So, you know, I sort of blocked the whole system. Although I've got calls blocked, but if somebody calls you several times, then, you know, the call comes through. But, you know, I blocked there.
So, right. There we go. Fantastic. All right, Jan, welcome.
Thank you.
We're finishing off with your fantastic Oloroso. But before we look at the Oloroso, and I just need to point out, some people may have been expecting the Amontillado, but we actually decided to change the wine late last week, and we're actually showing Oloroso today. But before we look at that, please can you tell us all about Fernando de Castilla, Jan?
Well, you know, Fernando de Castilla, it's a company a little bit special. It comes from a wine growing family that has been involved with the sherry industry for more than 200 years. And for a long time, for many generations, they were supplying grapes and the base wines for the sherry industry. And then back in the 1960s, they decided to create a company making only very superior sherries and brandies. So for a long time, when everybody was pushing for big volumes in the sherry trade, Fernando de Castilla has always been a very premium brand for basically for the on-trade and for specialists. And I took this company over now more than 20 years ago. We've sort of changed things, but we have not changed the philosophy. We're still a brand of very top-end sherry and brandy, and exclusively sort of aimed at the top on trade and specialists around the world. We export to around 50 countries today, but the philosophy is the same all over. We've never sort of entered the volume market for sherry. So everything we try to do is to make sherries that are true to tradition. You have to remember, sherry as we know it today has been made in this region for more than 500 years. Actually, the first charter of vintners and wine growers of Jerez was started on the 12th of August, 1483. That's quite a long time before any other denominations of origin in the world. So it's true to say that sherry was the first international wine in the world, and for centuries it was the ultimate wine for special occasions and for certain type of consumer. And sherry was always, through history, was always regarded as a food wine. Good sherry was enjoyed with food, and this is the way. When we talk about our wines, we talk a lot about the food pairings and the incredible pairings that you can get with good sherry and food. So what I've seen over the last 20 years when I've been in charge of this company is that this sort of concept, this revival of good sherry, dry sherries, or also very sweet sherries, but always aimed at being consumed at the table with good food. This is the sector of the sherry market which has really developed. And I like to think that we've in a way we've benefited from this incredible trend, because it's been a massive development. But we are also one of the chief producers that have helped to create this trend. And when you look at figures from the denomination of origin, you see that things like good palo cortado, dry amonteados, olorosos, finos en rama, all these type of wines are really developing. And the sort of supermarket sherries, the pale creams and the medium dries, medium sweets, consumed as aperitifs. This sector of the market has really dropped, but the quality end of the market has done extremely well.
Now, in terms of yourself, I always regard Fernando de Castilla as a boutique producer. Give us an idea, how many bottles do you produce?
Well, actually, Nigel, when I took over, we were doing 30,000 bottles a year. And today we are still boutique. We're still the same, but we do about 400,000 bottles a year.
Okay, but a lot of those are in smaller bottles.
But without compromising, without doing any sort of entry-level offerings. So today, I would say that Fernando de Castilla is probably the largest of the boutique wineries in Jerez, but we still feel that we belong in that category.
Yes.
And sort of, I think we are, together with Lustau and a few others, I think we are sort of in the leading end of this category.
I agree. And you touched there on the fact that, these sherries, certainly the antique range, they're very much gastronomic sherries, and they are absolutely fantastic to go with food, and they're very sort of sommelier friendly. Maybe can you just give us a little bit of sort of what you like to sort of pair some of your sherries with?
Yes, when we created the antique range, one of the things that we really wanted was to allow consumers to savor a wine exactly as it comes from the barrel. So we were absolutely pioneers when it comes to the sort of the Enrama concept. Our antique wines are unblended, unsweetened, unfined, not cold stabilized, and only filtered by cellulose flax. So when you get a wine like the Antique Oloroso, which is about 23 years old, average age, as certified by the DO, it's exactly the same as when you come to our cellar and I draw a sample from the cask and I let you taste it. It's exactly the same thing. And this sort of concept of really natural, unfiltered, unfined wines have spread, luckily, and you see a lot of other people doing similar things. But that's one of the chief characteristics of all the antique wines, that they are extremely pure and very much the same as when you draw it from the cask.
Indeed. And sort of, I'm tasting this Oloroso.
Well, I've got a glass here as well, Nigel. So,
And in terms of Oloroso, can you just tell us, briefly, sort of the production? How does the sherry become Oloroso?
Well, we are quite special in the way we operate as well, because we don't rely on base wines from cooperatives like most people. I have a partner in the business who has a very fine vineyard in the best Albarija, the chalky soil district of Jerez. So we have 43 hectares. We have our own pressing plant. We have temperature-controlled fermentation, and we do the first year of aging, what we call the sobretabla. The sobretabla takes place in the vineyard itself. So we don't transport the fragile young wines from the vineyard or the pressing plant into Jerez in the heat of autumn. And we make only 2 wines in base wines. The first pressing of the grapes, the mosto de yema, the yolk, is used for fino and manzanilla. And the second pressing is used for oloroso. And after stabilization in steel tanks, the wine is fortified by adding neutral grape spirits to the wine, up to 18% alcohol, and then introduced into 500-liter oak casks in the vineyard, and because the barrels are not filled up 100%, they're filled up to about 70%. So there's a chamber of air on top of the wine, which allows oxidation. And so the process of sort of oxidizing the wines in a controlled, noble way starts already in the vineyards. And after 1 year in the vineyard, it comes into our cellars in Jerez. And our cellars in Jerez are among the very oldest existing cellars or aging facilities in the middle of the city of Jerez. So our oldest buildings go back to the 18th century. They're, as you know, like churches, thick stone walls, sort of albarija or earthen floors. And the Antique Oloroso is placed in a cellar, which is a little bit lower, the height of the roofs and the windows makes it a little bit warmer than the cellars that we use for Fino. Fino needs more freshness and more air circulation, more humidity. But we have an absolutely excellent cellar where this wine is kept. And it's aged following the traditional system of criaderas and soleras. So fractional aging system where we periodically blend younger wines into the older ones until we reach, the solera, The Solera is the finished wine, and from the Solera butts, we draw the wines for bottling, and we replenish from what we take from the Solera, from the next oldest butts, and then the third oldest to the next second oldest. And this is a system which is mandatory in Jerez, and you're never allowed to draw more than 33% of what you have in the mature Solera stage for bottling. But we never bottle more than 10%. So this creates a wine which is a blend of many different vintages. In the Antique Oloroso, it can easily be a blend of wines that are from 70 or 80 different vintages. And we calculate the median age. So at the end of each year with the DO. So last year, we don't have the figures for this year, but last year, the Antique Oloroso had a median age of 24 years and 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So it's very unusual. Sherries are very unusual, but it's an important wine. Historically, it provides a totally different experience also with food. And you asked me about, sort of like food pairings with the Antique Oloroso. And I would say, sort of wintry sort of stews, like sort of a braised oxtail, which is one of the sort of signature dishes of the city of Jerez itself, which is oxtail braised and cooked with oloroso and vegetables, and it's absolutely magnificent. And when it's cold outside, like it is here today in Jerez, something like that is great. It's also fantastic with all sorts of terrines, pâtés, foie gras, game dishes, mature cheeses. I like it a lot with blue cheese, especially not salty blue cheese, but like British blue cheese, Stilton and things like that. And I think it's very much a winter wine. I think it's very, very much a wine for this type of the year. It's like warming. It's comforting when it's cold.
And how many bottles are produced of the Antique Oloroso?
The Antique Oloroso, we do about 6,000 half-liter bottles a year.
That's all.
That's all. That's 3,000 liters for the whole world.
Now that is definitely boutique.
That's very boutique, and that's probably what some of our big competitors will bottle in an hour. So.
And what I like about this particular style of sherry is it's got so much depth, so much structure, and the length is so long. It's remarkably long, and without sort of putting my sales hat on, it's great value. It's absolutely fantastic value for what it is.
Well, that's what we, I really agree. This wine is incredible value, because it's up there. If you look at, all our antique wines have all the great medals in the International Wine Challenge, Wine and Spirit Competition, you name it. It's up there with the very best wines in the world, but it's priced at the level which makes it possible for many consumers to sample the ultimate sherry. And sherry is not something people drink lots of. I think sherry goes a long way. When we have, lunches and dinners at the winery,
Oh, Jan, have you switched your video?
Yeah, I'm here. We always serve sherry with the whole meal. And people say, well, if you drink sherry with the whole meal, you'll be dizzy after a while. And it really doesn't happen. When you drink sherry with food, you sip sherry. You drink small volumes, and it's an explosion of flavor. So you don't need a lot of volume. When you drink other wines, you get a huge glass and you drink more of it. But sherry sherry goes a long way. So we never see any people, waggling out of the out of the bodega. Yeah?
Okay, a quick question. There's actually lots of questions and comments here, Jan. Adam from Man Behind the Curtain in Leeds is asking, in terms of once you've opened this lovely Oloroso, how long will it keep?
It will keep for a very long time. You have to remember that the wine is kept in casks, allowing the wine to be in contact with the air. So the wine is totally at ease with oxidation. It's not under oxidized. There's no risk of quick unwanted oxidation. So I would say a bottle like this can easily be kept for 6 months in the bottle.
Fantastic.
The open bottle.
So a couple of comments that are coming in. So Donald Edwards, great way to finish. We've got, sorry, I'm trying to get Victor. Question, sorry, can you reconfirm how many bottles of the Oloroso are made?
6,000 half-liter bottles.
So 6,000 half-liter bottles. That's all that's produced.
That's all.
Just bear me 1 second. There we go. Question from Alexandra. Well, she's saying that she had the opportunity to visit you, and thank you for your presentation. And it really is a fantastic bodega to visit. So thank you, Alexandra. Another question there. Few comments. But yeah, lots of really positive comments, basically saying how fantastic this sherry is and what a great way to sort of finish off this tasting. So thank you very much, Jan. There we go. Okay, all right. Jan, sincerely, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. And I'm really I appreciate the opportunity of joining. My very good friends, other suppliers. Like Jeff and Nikki and Danielle and everybody else. And I look forward to see you all again and see the people of the great team of Budino. I'm missing it. And I hope to see you very soon.
Fantastic. You're very kind, Jan. You're very kind. So thank you to all of the producers for joining us today. So a big shout, thank you. Big shout as if I'm sort of some DJ or something, but a big thank you to Louis Boutineau, to Danielle and Emmanuel from Cave de Turkheim, Nikki Moser from Sepp Moser, Alberto de Grazi, Jeff Chilcott from Marchesi de Grazi, Diego Santana from Bodegas Valenciso, and Jan Peterson from Fernando de Castilla. Once again, a big thank you to my colleagues, Scott, Bea and Sophie for helping pull this tasting together. Also, a big thank you to Abby, Kate, Christina in the marketing department, and also to Sally, Alex and Tony in the product managers. Massive thank you to Steve for pulling all the IT together. Also, a big thank you to Yvonne once again for making sure that everybody's received the wines today. I've really enjoyed today. It's been a fantastic tasting. Thank you all very much. The most important people that I need to thank are you guys for joining us. Without you, we couldn't have put this on. We realized here at Boutineau that times are tough and times are at this moment a little bit sort of bleak and uncertain. But thank you very much for your support. Hopefully in a few weeks, maybe a few months, we're going to come through this a lot stronger. And I certainly look forward to coming to see each and every one of you with more of these absolutely fantastic wines. So sincerely, many thanks. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully you've got some wine left. If you haven't, shame on you. But thank you once again. And I hope you all have fantastic days. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Well done, Nige.
Really good. Lovely to see all the producers and all the customers as well.